translating it into Arabic only. But in general, the translation of Harry Potter poses a big challenge to translators all over the world. As I previously mentioned, Harry Potter series has been translated into 67 languages. The books have seen translations to diverse languages, such as Azerbaijani, Ukrainian, Arabic, Urdu, Hindi, Bengali, Welsh, Afrikaans, Albanian, and Vietnamese. However, as I said, translating Rowling's Harry Potter series from English into any other language presents many challenges to translators, such as rhymes, acronyms, dialects, culture, riddles, jokes, invented words, and plot points that revolve around spellings or initials. These have been dealt with by various translators with different degrees of modification to the meaning of the original text. The books carried a number of words that are considered loaded names by linguists and translators, meaning that they carry a semantic load and that their morphology and phonology need to be adapted when translating them to a foreign language. For example, one of the house's names, Ravenclaw. Ravenclaw is a loaded name. It's Raven plus Claw. And Voldemort's name, it's Fight of Death or Theft of Death in French. So if I just copy the name, I said Voldemort in Arabic or Ravenclaw, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't give the same meaning that Rowling wants to say. So these words will, translators try to tackle different methodologies. They were translated at different countries using several translation strategies, such as copying the names with no attempt to transmit the original English meaning, transliterating even if the name lost its original meaning, replacing the name with another given name from the target language, or translating the name using native words that convey the same meaning. Another challenge of translating Harry Potter series is the fact that many of the nuance of the British culture and language is unfamiliar to international readers. Such things require careful and creative translating. Not standard English present in the book also had to be given careful consideration. The character of Hagrid, he speaks with an accent and uses particular types of slang. So in the Japanese translation, for example, he speaks for them in the Tohoku dialect, which to a Japanese reader conveys a similar provincial feel. So they had that the Japanese translator has to choose a dialect which goes with the same dialect of Hagrid. Rowling also invented a great number of words and phrases for the books, such as spells, magical words, items, and place names. Many of these words involve wordplay, rhyming, and historical references that are difficult to translate. A large number of spells are drawn from or inspired by Latin and have a certain resonance with English speakers. For example, priori incantatem. This is a spell which causes that the last spells performed by a wand to be reproduced in reverse order. This would be familiar to many English-speaking readers, as the words prior, it's previous, and incantation, it's spell or charm. Some translators have created new words themselves. Others have resorted to transliteration. In the Arabic translation of Nahdat Masr, the magical words, spells, and incantations were left as they are in the English version. Then I will move to my own translation to Harry Potter and the challenges I myself encountered in doing it. I attempted to translate the first chapter of the second volume of Harry Potter series into Arabic. As I said, I chose it because it's a challenge to translators. And I wanted to take the challenge and try to create a sort of work that is appealing to the Arab reader and is adapted to his or her culture. Also, we don't have to forget that the audience here is limited. The audience are either kids or teenagers. So we have to take this into consideration, that I have to use a language that appeals to these people, to let them read it in Arabic. So The other challenge is that the Arabic translation, as I mentioned before, of Harry Potter presented by Nahdat Masr is yet another reason that their translation is neither a word-for-word translation, nor sense-for-sense translation, nor an adaptation. It's a kind of a poor summary that is written in classical Arabic that I find unsuitable for children and teens, who are the main target audience of the book. In my attempt, I tried as much as I can to domesticize the text, to make it less foreign, and to adopt the sense-for-sense approach over the word-for-word approach that was mentioned by Jeremy Monday. When we took the class of last year of the translation theory and practice, we learned that, according to Monday, the word-for-word approach that follows so closely the form of source language produces an absurd translation, cloaking the sense of the original. And the sense-for-sense approach, on the other hand, allows the sense or content of the source language to be translated. Also, Egyptian-born translator Mona Baker described the word-for-word method to be unsuccessful and had to be revised using the second sense-for-sense method. The adoption of this sense-for-sense approach directed me to adopt another approach, namely to liberate the words from the confines of the source language and allow them to live again in the language into which they are translated. According to Susan Bassnett, the translator is seen as a liberator, someone who frees the text from the fixed signs of its original shape, making it no longer subordinate to the source text, but visibly endeavoring to bridge the space between source author and text and the eventual target language readership. In order to utilize the sense-for-sense approach and to liberate myself from the confines of Rowling's text, I did several changes in the Arabic text, including changing the names of the characters, school, streets, into Arabic names, and resorting to the colloquial English dialect in the conversation between characters, which gave me the liberty to play with words and to create genuine and enjoyable dialogues among characters. I found colloquial Egyptian Arabic would be more expressive and more appealing for young people than using classical Arabic that would contain sophisticated words and expressions that won't suit a children's text. However, I used modern standard Arabic for the narrator of the book, so I used both things. The narrator was using the modern standard Arabic, but in the dialogue between the characters, it is colloquial Egyptian dialect. So in my translation version, Harry Potter, who is the boy who lived, has changed into Nagi Gharib. Nagi means survival. And Gharib because he was weird. He was doing these spells and these things when he was living with his aunt and uncle. They saw him as a weird person. So I chose this name, Nagi Gharib, to give to Harry Potter. Hogwarts School for Witchcraft and Wizardry has become مدرسة القلعة للفنون السحرية. Dursley and Dudley, the uncle and the cousin, who are both fat and mean and whose names start with a D and have the same rhyme, have changed into Fakhri wa Fawzi al-Ghatid because both of them were really dumb. Hagrid, the gigantic gatekeeper, has become Antar because Antar in our culture is this heroic big figure. So I found that this name could suit him. And so on. In Nahdat Masr translation, British names are kept and the whole text was in classical Arabic. Differences in cultures sometimes pose a challenge to translators from a language to another, especially that if these two cultures are very much distant from each other. In translating Bacon, I found it a problem to keep it as it is, not because of any religious reasons, but because of cultural reasons in the first place. If we are talking about an Arab family who is having breakfast, they are most unlikely to have bacon. Thus, I changed it into pasterma to be more realistic. The same occurred with translating drinks and roast pork. However, had I kept the names and incidents as they were in the source language, the British text, I wouldn't have taken this decision, as the setting and characters would be European, and it would be culturally convenient to have bacon for breakfast and drinks before dinner. Although it is the endorsed Arabic translation, In addition to being the liberator, as per Susan Bassnett, I have also attempted to be the communicator, the resurrector, and the influencer, as other linguists suggest. Although it is the endorsed Arabic translation by the Harry Potter series publishers, the translation of Nahdat Masr Publishing Company into Arabic lacks several significant criteria of the good translation. As I mentioned before, the Arabic text appears to be a summary of the original text. Several parts were skipped without any apparent reason, including important parts about the past of the hero of the story himself and conversations between the characters that would show their personalities. I assume that the translation is done hastily, as for reasons of secrecy from the part of the publisher, translation on a given book could only start after it had been released in English, leading to a lag of several months before the translations were available. So in order to keep up with the market demands and for economic profitable reasons, these translations into Arabic were not given the sufficient time to be done the way it should be. In addition to the skipped parts, the text suffers from inaccuracy in most of its parts, and from wrong meanings of words and sentences in some cases. For instance, lightning is translated as mudi, whereas the author meant barq, in an apparent example that they are mixed between lightning and lighting. Also, clear, his throat is translated yas'al, which is not the case in the text. A sentence like, and walk on the newspaper, is translated as واحترس وانت تسير على الجرائد, which has become a different meaning. The translation of some of the religiously sensitive words is an issue in Nahdat Masr translation. Although they are translating the text as it is without any adaptation to the Arabic reader, they translated a word like beacon as bayt, as beacon is a religiously sensitive word. Some translators and publishers, like Nahdat Masr in the Arab Islamic countries, impose protective cultural measures, especially on children's literature, to make sure there is no potential threat to the religious or cultural ideologies. The translation of the whole book, the words used, the structure followed, deprive the Arab reader from the beauty and glory of the imaginative world created by Rowling. The Arab reader couldn't enjoy the dialogue or the descriptions of places or the adventures of the little wizards, as the translation is not up to the same standard of the source text. I would just give an example, a very small example of just one page of Harry Potter, the translation of Nahdat Masr, and how did I manage to translate it. It's just the first page, actually, because in order not to confuse you with so many things. The worst birthday. Not for the first time, an argument had broken out over breakfast at number 4 Private Drive. Mr. Vernon Dursley had been woken in the early hours of the morning by a loud hooting noise from his nephew Harry's room. Third time this week, he roared across the table. If you can't control that owl, it'll have to go. Harry tried yet again to explain. She's bored, he said. She's used to flying around outside. If I could just let her out at night, do I look stupid? Snarled Uncle Vernon, a bit of fried egg dangling from his bushy mustache. I know what will happen if that owl is out. He exchanged dark looks with his wife, Petunia. Harry tried to argue back, but his words were drowned by a long, loud belch from the Dursley's son, Dudley. I want more bacon. Bacon. There's more in the frying pan, sweetums, said Aunt Petunia, turning misty eyes on her massive son. And then we'll come to the translation of نهضة مصر. لم تكن هذه هي المرة الأولى التي ينفجر فيها بركان الغضب على مائدة الإفطار في المنزل رقم 4 شارع برايفت. فقد استيقظ السيد فرناند دورسلي في الصباح الباكر على صرخة عالية صادرة من حجرة ابن شقيقة زوجته هاري. زمجر عبر المائدة صارخا: هذه هي المرة الثالثة هذا الأسبوع. إذا لم تكن قادرا على السيطرة على هذه البومة فعليك بالتخلص منها. حاول هاري أن يشرح إنها تشعر بالملل وقد اعتادت على الطيران ليلا في الخارج لو سمحت لها. صرخ العم فيرنون والطعام يتناثر من فمه. هل تظن أنني غبي؟ أعرف ما سيحدث لو طارت هذه البومة في الخارج. وتبادل نظرات خائفة مع زوجته بيتونيا. حاول هاري أن يتكلم لكن دودلي ابنها اندفع قائلا: أريد مزيدا من البيض. قالت الخالة بيتونيا وعيناها تقطران حبا وإعجابا: يوجد المزيد في الطبق الكبير. This is the way I did it. I hope you liked it. أسوأ عيد ميلاد. لم تكن المرة الأولى التي يشتعل فيها الشجار حاد على مائدة الإفطار في البيت نمرة 4 شارع واحد النخيل. فقد استيقظ العم فخري الغتيت من نومه في الصباح الباكر على صوت هرج ومرض قادما من غرفة ناجي ابن أخت زوجته. صاح العم فخري بأعلى صوته، دي ثالث مرة الأسبوع ده، بقول لك إيه؟ لو مش قادر تسيطر على البومة دي أنا هرميها بره. حاول ناجي أن يشرح الأمر مرة أخرى، ما هي زهقانة ونفسها تطير، لو بس أقدر أخرجها النهارده بالليل شوية. صرخ العم الفخري بينما يندفع الطعام من فمه، هو أنا شكلي عبيط؟ أنا عارف هيحصل إيه لو البومة دي خرجت. وتبادل فخري مع زوجته زهرة نظرات غاضبة. حاول ناجي أن يعاود النقاش ولكن كلماته ذهبت أدراج الرياح بصوت فوزي ابن خالته الذي أخذ يصرخ قائلا: عايز بسطرمة تاني. أجابت الخالة زهرة وهي تنظر لابنها الضخم بعيون تفيض حبا وإعجابا: في تاني في الطاسة يا حبوبي. This is what I did. And that's all for whatever happened in Harry Potter in Arabic. So I'm ready for any questions.
Thank you, Rehab. You're up for grabs now. People have questions, comments.
What about translating a cultural context, like the boarding school setting in Britain, which I don't know whether that exists in the Arab world? Is it particularly difficult to convey these cultural structures when they might not exist in the target language?
Yes, I think it exists some. It poses some challenges to the translator. I haven't been to this part of the boarding school at Harry Potter, so I didn't really translate this part. But if I'm going to translate it, I'm going to think of something that goes with it. But actually, in our culture, we have in Egypt in the past, or even now, but very few boarding schools, we can translate it to madrasa dakhliya. So we can, but I don't know if madrasa dakhliya would give the same sense now of the boarding school or not. But I mean, there is a translation for it, but because it was there in our culture in the past.
Did you look at all of the films and how the films are translated?
I looked at the films and I think that they have been translated much better than the book because it's word. I mean, you see all the translations. It's not like the book you can skip parts. No, you have to see it. I think I like the translation to an extent. Yes.
Your question? Yeah. Based on our discussion prior to that, although your translation is very interesting, but how subjective is it? Because doesn't it pose difficulty that perhaps you here in Egypt would do it well, but someone in another country would be very subjective and change the spirit of the story based on the names and the characters?
You mean another country, Arab country?
No, not Arab. Maybe, I mean, for example, if it's done in the Gulf, it would be totally different than our culture here or in the other countries. And also in, for example, in Africa, wouldn't that change the original Harry Potter? Would you read the Harry Potter in English and then find that it's different than this one? Wouldn't it be subjective?
I'm keeping the spirit, actually. I'm keeping the spirit of the story. I didn't change any of the events or anything, but I'm just trying to make it appealing to the Arab reader. I have read that it happened also with some translators in France, that some youth translated it online in their own colloquial language, different from the original one. And it was very much appreciated by the French. So it happens that you can do this. And as I said, that we learned in this course that you have to be imaginative, creative, liberator, resurrector. You have to set out of the confines of the language itself. I understand what you mean, that this would ruin the real story, or it is going to be very different from the real story. But it is the same, actually I feel it's the same spirit. If you read it in English, you will feel the same thing as when you read it in Arabic. And as I said, it's not only done in Arabic, but it is done in other languages as well. And also trying to solve some of these challenges that they use different things from the original text. Sometimes even the US editions they changed the title of some of the versions, especially I think the first one. Instead of the Philosopher's Stone, it was translated into the Sorcerer's Stone in order to appeal to the US market. So we have this kind of that you can really play around to present.
So you can in the first page of your translation, you can write it's based on Harry Potter story. I'm answering her or you want it to be like a translation for Harry
It is
Potter?
a translation. It's a translation for Harry Potter. Without based on, no, it's a translation.
Nice, yeah.
غلاسة
Nice,
يعني.
nice.
Yeah, it's a translation of Harry
It
Potter.
would be very interesting for the young children to
Of course.
with this simple Arabic.
Yeah, it is going to be
Yeah.
much simpler than the Nahdat
Yeah.
Masr one.
But also, if I may interject in this discussion, because I think it's important, no translation is the original. No translation is a reproduction of the original. Even the one that Nahdat Masr produced,
Yes.
horrific as it is, tries to sort of do the almost word for word, and it's a complete failure. And therefore, I think one of the things that we try to do in this seminar is actually have translators think out of the box and understand, that translation is not a reproduction of the original. Here we're talking about the many lives of Harry Potter. And one of the tasks actually of translators is to give an afterlife to the original text. And that's why Rehab is speaking about resurrection. That you actually give these texts another lease on life in other languages. And I think that is important. Hence, rather than say based on, it is a translation. And I think that one of the things that translators are more aware of today is that they are, also creative writers. And if you stop thinking of yourself as a machine, as a translator, like Nahdat Masr people did, you will come up with marvelous solutions in translation and engage real translation issues in ways that, people who continue to think of themselves as machines will never do.
I'm just wondering, how far can you go before calling it an adaptation?
We discussed this.
Yeah.
well,
حسن الموضوع
يعني
كبير.
بصي هقول لك حاجة. يعني it's important to remember that in any text, as we said, there are, في ثوابت, there are the invariables and there are variables. All right. So this is really your measure. To what extent are you going to change the invariable itself, right? I guess when you start doing that, then we can begin to speak about adaptation, But I think translators, in this case, for example, she's very aware of what the invariable is, that, and what is the invariable, if I may ask you, in this text?
The invariable?
What are the invariables? And it's not one, but several.
The story itself, the invariables are the characters, for example, the character itself, not the names, not what they are doing, what they are trying to achieve. This is what I think that it has to be invariable.
Okay. Yeah, one of the invariables is, of course,
And the structure.
Yeah, and the structure. I didn't
also all these
change.
big sort of themes, right?
Yeah.
Good versus evil, مش عارفة, the fact that Harry is sort of modeled on, a prophet of. There are certain things that you want to sort of preserve as you go along in the text. Now, if you turn him into a clown, then you are impacting the very core, the invariable of the text. And then it may be a parody, it may be an adaptation, it may be other things. But I think that as a translator, you should think all the time that you have quite a wide range of possibilities, and that you should indeed use that freedom responsibly, because at the end of the day you have to be responsible, right? But you mustn't straitjacket yourself. Hence the importance of sort of flying, liberating, and suddenly the text comes to life because of certain strategies that we have adapted.
And also, commenting on this, I remember when I was translating this, I was doing some conversations with my friends. What do you think about Hogwarts school? What shall I call it? They told me Gala Gala, the Gala Gala school. مدرسة Gala Gala السحرية. I told them, okay, it's a catching word, but it doesn't give the same strength of the Hogwarts school for witchcraft and wizardry. It's different. This one is serious. It's a school. It's for people to go and learn. But Gala Gala, it gives me this impression that they are going to a circus or something, playing around, and it changed. So even when you adapt, when you think of a different thing, you have to think about it very well. How this will serve my text, how it will go with the spirit of the whole thing. But this is important, commenting on what you're saying.
Is it necessary then to write an introduction maybe to the translation, maybe explaining this, writing the real names, not in translation, and then explaining why did you choose to translate it? Because as a reader, maybe I don't have the skills of reading in English. I want to read the name of Harry Potter, and I want to know why the name is changed, and I want to, when I see the film, I want to read the names that I saw in the film. So maybe in this case, an introduction would be necessary to write why did you change it and what are the real names, and I think that would.
I think this could be in a preface or something that I can write this, or we don't have to do this.
Yeah, well, it's always a choice.
Yeah.
Always a choice to preface books or introduce.
To just
but
write.
you can also rely on the intelligence of your reader.
I understand,
And,
but maybe
عمرنا ما حد هيقرا
maybe this is a compromise. Maybe this is a compromise so that intelligent readers will go and
الأغبياء يمتنعون.
No, but there's another problem actually with prefaces and introductions. It's a market problem. Publishers are reluctant most of the time because it's costly. It means this many pages more in each book. They're very miserly when it comes to that. And so and there is a long tradition of the importance of the invisibility of the translator. In the text is speaking to you in another language. You don't even look at who translated it. It just exists in Japanese, right? You're not interested in who translated it, right? We don't know who translated it for Nagit Mas. There was a whole bunch of people. They each took 20 pages, and it's a sort of amassed together very industrially, right? And they can do that. Publishers can get away with this because translators have always been treated so as subordinates, as invisible, as inconsequential. The important thing is for the text to speak to you in this other language. Hence, the debate over, the importance of translated prefaces and introductions, which I think are very important.
So, did Harry Potter have the books have any sort of commercial success in Egypt?
Yeah.
Or they were popular?
Yeah.
Even with the poor translation?
Yeah, because people who are reading it in Arabic, they don't see the English. They just read it. They can be enjoying it, but I don't think it's the same way when you read it in English. But I think that they are ignorant of what is going on in English, so they don't know the difference.
But still, they sold a lot of books and a lot of people were reading them.
Yes. And they are doing delivery also if you want it at your doorstep. Yeah, very active.
But they probably also distributed region-wide, right?
I read it, they are for Arabic, but I don't know whether it is in the region. I think so, because there is no other Arabic translator other than them. So I think that they distribute it in the region as well.
Was it banned in Saudi Arabia?
It is banned in not in Saudi Arabia, in the UAE. In the United Arab Emirates, they banned it from schools, because they found that it is against the Islamic values.
Mhm.
Yeah, but in schools only. Yeah, I thought it's in Saudi Arabia, but I haven't read anything about Saudi Arabia. It was it was by the United Arab Emirates.
But also, actually, to come back to this idea of the choice of Egyptian dialect, once you opt for the kind of translations that Rehab is proposing, which I love, right, you're also constraining your market. You are catering to an Egyptian audience.
Yeah, that's
right?
true.
And it's the same kind of process that has taken place with all of the cartoons. I mean, all of the cartoons, you know. Once upon a time, there were translations of Cinderella in Egyptian Arabic, right? You won't see this anymore. It's all standardized. It's all in modern standard. And these are considerations of the market, because you want to distribute regionally and internationally, globally. You have all of these Arab communities in, you know, all over the world, who actually teach their kids Arabic through this visual commercial material. You know? And that's why kids say things like "Ya la lawl," and, you know, they speak in the language they see on the screen, and this is very recent.
Yeah,
It's true. Well, one question that I was asking, how does J.K. Rowling, what does she know about the other translations? I mean, as an author, as an established author,
she knows. I think the publisher only is the one who is.
I don't know what happens in the translation world, but if like in her place, I'm sure that she would love to have like 76 translation. Actually, that there's 76, right? 67 that they reflect her real work. But how do they get to find out what the translation is like? Do they have like other independent translators looking at the official translation? How does it work in the world of?
I don't know. I answered you this morning, but I don't think she looks at them. I think that the publisher.
If she were to look at them,
she won't understand.
Exactly.
She won't understand.
So what are we saying finally? What is it?
How do you find out?
She won't find out.
Exactly.
Find out? Okay.
You don't.
She won't find out. Never.
I think authors understand that translations are other texts of their parallel texts to their text. Otherwise, they go crazy.
Yeah.
Right? There's no way that they can control a text in translation. It's a different text. And I mean, it has to be scandalously bad, you know, for someone to bring it to your attention, you know. And then you would have to sit with somebody and figure out why it's so bad and why people are objecting. But normally, you know, and I think that's important to know at the outstart. And when you think of film adaptations of novels, you know, it's a sort of parallel situation. You know, Naguib Mahfouz always said, you know, I wrote the book, but you know, whatever happens on the screen is a different text. It's none of my business. You know, if Hassan Imam, you know, rendered the trilogy, you know, really sort of very commercially seductive and, you know, with all of this, these sensuous and sensual encounters, that's fine, because that's Hassan Imam's text. It's not Naguib Mahfouz.
And it's the same as when Ala al-Aswani's work are translated into Italian, or Yusuf Zidane, his works are translated into French. I don't think that they know this. I mean, they as Dr. Samia said, it's another text. They know that it's another text, parallel text.
So we'll wait for your copy online.
Unless, of course, authors want to get translators into trouble. You know, into trouble. I mean, sometimes you fall out with your translator for whatever reason. And then, you know, authors can pick on their translators. And this has happened, actually, now that you mentioned Ala al-Aswani, you know, there was a big scandal around one of his books, you know, and he was really picking on the translator. You know. So these are very particular cases that one can study and look at why, when does this happen?
Any other questions or comments?
See you in
Thank you. This was really
whatever happened in another
wonderful.
translation.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much. Thank you all.
Before you go yet, and I was sorry that the refreshments came in early, so please have